look at a story coming out of South Carolina, the case of Jamal Sutherland. It happened at the beginning of the year, and since then, we've learned that two officers have been fired for their role in the death of Jamal Sutherland. However, no criminal charges have been brought forth. And so his family, along with attorneys and community leaders, are demanding justice for Jamal. What happened to Jamal is tragic. He was originally checked into a mental health facility where his family thought he would receive the help that he needed. After an incident, the staff there decided to turn him over to the jail where he was waiting for a bail hearing. And officers said that he was resisting when they were trying to get him to go into his court hearing. And so, needless to say, he was tasered more than 6 times. He also was pepper sprayed. They put a spit bag over his head, and his final words were, "I can't breathe," after he was convulsing from being tased. And one of the officers had their knee on his back. I know that this may be a graphic story for some, but nonetheless, it is an important story, Ben, as we continue to examine the treatment of inmates across this country. We've covered the story of Kelsey Rayner in Georgia, who died in a jail cell. We covered the story of Hardell Sherrill in Beltrami County Jail, who died because they would not give him a medical treatment. And here, in the case of Jamal Sutherland, a man who really should have been in that mental health care facility, but was taken to jail. He died in jail as well. I want you guys to hear from his mother and from the family's attorney. Take a listen.
We have the honor of fighting for justice for the family of Jamal Sutherland. We don't want half justice for Jamal Sutherland. We want whole justice. Yeah. Yes, sir. Yeah. If we let them have their day in court, everybody will see what the truth is. They unjustly killed this young black man who was having a mental health crisis. That's right. He had committed no crime. It wasn't like he was a hardened criminal. This was a child who needed a helping hand. They pepper sprayed him, after they tased him, after they kept him in a prone position for 5 minutes, him saying, "I can't breathe," they put a spit mask over his face to make it more difficult for him to breathe. We don't have to have a DA tell us what reckless is.
That's right. Amen. I want everybody to know how this system failed my son. The first thing that happened is he began to get sick, and he asked me for 4 days, "Mom, take me to get some help." I said, "Not now, baby. You have to spend the holidays with us." On the 31st, he declared, "I can't do it anymore." My husband and I take my son to a place where we thought justice, peace, and health would come to him. But because of injustice by one white female, young white female, that lied on my child, he was taken to prison. Jamal should have never, ever been sent out of that system when you yourself committed him. All of this happened to my son in less than 24 hours.
Now, Ben, the question here really becomes if the sheriff's office saw this footage that we're looking at now and saw enough wrongdoing that they fired 2 officers, how is it that the county attorney can't look at this footage and realize that criminal charges need to be pressed?
Well, that's the essential question now, isn't it? Especially because there's culpability. They have fired them, and there's going to be financial culpability. It's amazing. This empire is well prepared to pay for all the lives that they take from black people, but they're not willing to penalize the officers who are out there doing it. And I think that's the final hurdle. We've seen so many times police officers get away get away with these things, even while the city is paying these settlements.
Yeah. I mean, when you think about somebody being tased 6 times, did you expect him to survive that? I mean, at what point do you say, okay, these officers' actions are short of professional, but or they don't meet the standard of being professional, but they're just short of being criminal? I mean, if you tase someone 6 times, you put a spit bag over their head, you have your knee on their back, they're telling you they can't breathe. I mean, really, like, is this how we're training our officers to respond to somebody who has been placed in jail after also being diagnosed as schizophrenic, according to some reports?
Mm.
And why would you use that kind of force for someone who is having mental health issues? It doesn't quite seem like that type of force would be helpful in
Right.
de-escalating a situation like that.
Right.
And so I just, my heart goes out to the Jamal Sutherland family as they continue their fight for justice. I think it's, from a media standpoint, especially important that we continue to hear the stories of the families, because when you look at even the reports about what happened inside of the the mental health facility before Jamal was transferred over to the jail. When you look at those reports, they're very vague. And when you contrast what those reports say against what the mother says, they're
Mm.
two very different narratives. In most reports, it's just labeled as an incident, and there's not much detail about why exactly Jamal was taken from that mental health institution and placed into a jail. And according
Right.
to his mother, Jamal was asking for the staff members there to give him his medicine, which is something that they were supposed to be doing anyways. And as he continued to ask for his medicine and the treatment he got, he actually asked them to send him home, and they
Mm.
refused to send him home. In fact, they committed him there. They admitted him, and so he was unable to leave on his own free will.
Mm.
And one thing after another, the staff there ends up sending him to jail,
Mm.
which
And
is just, it's odd.
and I heard the mother speaking there, and apologies, George, was having some technical difficulties, but the mother, she spoke about the culpability of one of the staff members, a young white woman, being partly responsible for this. And I wonder, in the investigation, have they, what has come up in regards to that? Because that seems to be a missing piece that the mother is letting us in on.
Yeah, and because I think the bigger question here is, why was he in jail in the first place? If this
Exactly.
was a man who was diagnosed as schizophrenic and he needed mental health help, and they committed him to the mental health facility? He needed
Mm.
help.
That's right.
So why would you eject him from the environment where he's going to get the help he needs and put him in a place with folks who are actually facing criminal charges? That is not going, I mean, think about this. If someone is having a schizophrenic, um, I don't know if you want to say it's, a break or
Episode.
uh, episode,
Yeah.
would putting them in a jail, putting them in
Oh
that
no, my
environment,
goodness.
get them the help that they need
No,
to live through that episode, to
no.
overcome that episode? Is it going to mitigate the issue, or is it going to make the issue worse?
Right. By all accounts, it's going to make the issue worse. And this system is so accustomed. One of the answers, unfortunate answers to your question, is that this system is accustomed to just treating black people in this manner. If there's a black man in question, throw him in jail. Right? Before they do anything else, before they even offer, the man is pleading for help. They don't see him as a human being crying for help. They see him as someone who needs to be thrown into the system. And it ultimately led to his death. How many times has this played out over and over again? We saw the images of Rikers Island that came out over the weekend, where black men, young black men who are still in their street clothes, they had not even been processed nor charged with anything, were stacked on top of each other in something that was you could only compare to the slave ship. That's how they had these black bodies stacked in Rikers. And this is just how this system is accustomed to treating black lives. And so, unfortunately, no, they'd have no regard for a person who's going through a mental health crisis. It's just accustomed to throwing the book at us.
Yeah. And, unfortunately, Ben, when you think about it, even beyond just the black bodies, it's just anyone who's not like them, because
right.
You can't understand a person who's having a mental health crisis. And the black community is we're not exclusive to having mental health issues.
That's right.
And so if this system cannot figure out a way to deal with people in this country who don't fit the mold of, being a normal white man, if we decide that our mental health system can dispose of you, our jail system can dispose of you, and then we can look at a person who's having a mental health crisis who gets killed, who is seeking help and ends up being killed, and there is no consequence for killing a person like that. What are we saying as a society about our most vulnerable population? We're saying that it's justifiable to just kill them off, that they're not human, that they don't deserve help. What message are we sending if we have a criminal justice system that cannot protect the most vulnerable people in our community?
George, at the risk of changing or even amending the subject, what you're saying sends off my red flags as it pertains to how many young black children in general. I think there's some 120,000 children who have lost their primary care provider, their parent, their guardian during this pandemic because their parent died. Now, these are children. We don't know how many are going to be at the mercy of that same system, not the criminal justice system, but we know what you see and the cruelty that we see in the criminal justice system. What do we think is going to happen to these precious children who are now at the mercy of our child foster system? And so it just sends off my red flags and almost in terms of like red alert, because look at how our system treats the least of these in terms of a mental health crisis. And now consider what it's done throughout this pandemic. And now we have 120,000 children who are at the mercy of the same system.
Yeah. Well, Ben, I'm going to continue following the Jamal Sutherland story and provide updates as they come. I understand that you have also been tracking a story this morning as well.
Yeah, we're keeping our eye on Facebook. I know Facebook is one of the many platforms that we stream on, but we have to keep our eyes on them. There is a report now that has come out called the Facebook Papers, which shows that Facebook was fully aware. In fact, they did their own research into the harm that their system was causing. I want to read directly from the Washington Post. A trove of internal Facebook documents reveals that the social media giant has privately and meticulously tracked real-world harms exacerbated by its platforms, ignored warnings from its employees about the risk of their design decisions, and exposed vulnerable communities around the world to a cocktail of dangerous content. I want us to take a listen to this summary that was provided by The Recount as they put it all together, what's happening with Facebook.
When it rains, it pours for Facebook, but this is a straight-up tsunami. The tech giant may have confronted whistleblowers, congressional inquiries, and PR crises before, but it now faces them all at once in a perfect storm. On Friday, a consortium of nearly 24 news outlets began publishing a series of stories, collectively called the Facebook Papers. The reporting is based on hundreds of internal company documents, which were included in disclosures made to the Securities and Exchange Commission and provided to Congress in redacted form by Facebook whistleblower Frances Haugen's legal legal counsel. The documents reveal how Facebook has been privately and meticulously tracking real-world harms exacerbated by its platforms, has ignored warnings from its employees about the risks of their design decisions, and exposed vulnerable communities to dangerous content. The Facebook papers include allegations that the company did not stop the steal misinformation following the 2020 election in the U.S., that it censored anti-government dissidents in Vietnam, and that it stoked violent ethnic conflicts in India. In a memo Saturday, Facebook's vice president of global affairs told employees, quote, "We need to steel ourselves for more bad headlines in the coming days, I'm afraid."
Now, Georgia, I also need to point out that Facebook, 55% of Facebook is owned by Mark Zuckerberg. He is the law. He's the captain of the ship. The buck stops with him. And all of these decisions, in many reports, employees have been disgusted because they bring this to his attention, and yet and still he makes these decisions, oftentimes autonomously. Now, the reason this is important is because if you notice all of the fruits, it's not as though Facebook is benefiting everybody. Facebook is benefiting specifically far right-wing ideologies. It's been documented over and over again. If you want to ask yourself the reason why, well, Facebook often gets to hide behind the veil of technology. But in this case, these are decisions being made by Mark Zuckerberg, who we can clearly see has an ideology, and that ideology is now being spread to billions of people on Facebook.
Well, and is there not a similar thread here of, this ability to act as though you don't have the power to intervene, to not protect vulnerable populations? If you are overseeing communications that are becoming threatening or seemingly violent, hateful, you don't have a duty to intervene? That's not your job. That's not your responsibility, right? Just turn the other cheek, act like you didn't see it. Nothing's happening here. We in America, we have cultivated this culture that, there's just nothing I can do about it. Oh, that's so unfortunate. And we will sit by it. It deeply disturbed me. The story that came out about the woman being raped on the train. And you had these onlookers, people taking out their cell phone and filming it, and nobody actually doing a thing.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, what does that say about the character of our country when we have become a people that will stand by and watch harm happen? And that's what Zuckerberg is doing. He has a window into the communications of every American, and not even just our country. I mean, he has a window into communications across this world. So he sees the foreshadowing of things before it even happens. He knew about Stop the Steal before it escalated into this huge riot on January 6th. Right.
That's right.
But he has the ability to just shrug his shoulders. He has the privilege to shrug his shoulders and act like it's not his problem. But the reality, Ben, if we're witnessing something and we're not a part of the solution, that means, you guys, we're part of the problem.
That's right. Absolutely, Georgia. Yeah. No, I'm just listening and taking everything that you just said in. Because it reminds me that this is on purpose. A lot of times we let these tech bros go out here and pretend as if they have a level of knowledge, or they have ascended to a level that transcends their bigotry, their racism, their misogyny, their patriarchy. We have to remember how Facebook got started. First of all, he stole it. He stole the idea from two twins. I forgot their names, but, there's a movie about it. Second of all, it started off as a way of choosing which face was prettier, which woman was the prettiest. And for all intents and purposes, Mark Zuckerberg built this democracy-breaking Facebook platform on the back of his incel, his inability to get a girl. And this is what we're dealing with. But we've given him the ability to have this prestige because he's a tech bro and Facebook does these wonderful things and it's so complicated. But in reality, no, we're dealing with a man who got where he did through theft. And also, not just the theft of the platform, but of our data and all of our intimate conversations, intricate relationships. He makes his money off of our connectivity. And here we are at the mercy of him, because now we've given him the power to disrupt our democracy.
Yeah. And I think he's created this algorithm that is not based on the common good or what's best for society, but he has created an algorithm that is going to generate the most money
That's
by
right.
getting you to watch more, by getting
That's right.
you to watch longer, even if that's at the expense of truth. And
Yeah.
so if you enjoy a good conspiracy,
Mm.
Facebook will give
Yeah.
it to you every
That's right.
single time you open that platform. And guess what? They're going to give you more, and they're going to give you longer versions, and they're going to give it to you from the people that you love. And
Right.
that is what has really fostered these silos that we're seeing in our community. And that's why right now we're at a time where I believe our country is more polarized than it has ever been. Because
Right.
every time you pick up your phone, you're getting information that supports whatever it is you believe, even if it's not true.
That's right.
And so you're fed more and more and more of that. And then meanwhile, the people who have opposing views as you, to get them to watch more and to get to them to watch longer, they're seeing more and more and more of what it is that they believe in, even if it's not true. And so
Yeah.
now you have people who have so many different ideas and perspectives to corroborate their thoughts and beliefs, even if it's not true,
That's right.
but it gives them the confidence that they need to show
Absolutely.
up in this world as though their beliefs and perspectives are undeniably true because they've heard it from dozens of people on the internet
Hmm.
who think
That's right.
just like them, who
Mm.
have, these fake documents or fake websites that they can point to, and so it's like the snowball effect.
That.
And it just
Mm.
keeps getting worse and worse. And at what point is Facebook going to intervene?
Well,
At what point?
just to
Yep.
go ahead. Well, I was going to say just one fine point here. Um, I think everyone, most people who are listening, knows who Alex Jones is. Alex Jones built his empire through Facebook. YouTube helped him, but Facebook was very much intricate in it. And you mentioned these conspiracy theories. You mentioned this community of people who gives this like echo chamber of everything that I'm saying, no matter how ridiculous it is, Georgia. They believe some of the most absurd things. They think they believe horse dewormer is going to fix them versus the vaccine. And now they have a burgeoning community, a growing community of people who confirm that idiocy. And it's brought to you in part, not in part, but in great part, by Mark Zuckerberg, who paved the way intentionally. Documents reveal that too, that he himself paved the way for Alex Jones. So these things are intentional, and we have to keep our eye on this so-called technology because it's not unbiased. It's not unbigoted. It is built off of the bigotries of people like Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah, yeah, and the only thing that I was getting to next was just like, do we have a duty to intervene?
Mm.
And that's a question I think that we seriously need to ask ourselves. Is it okay for us to continue on as though it's not our problem? We
Mm.
have no role in this. There's nothing I can do. Or at what point do we witness something? Are we a part of something? And if we say, I do have the duty to intervene, I do have a duty to say something, to do something, and whether that's because my health and safety is on the line, or
Mm.
the greater good of society is on the line here.
Right.
Then I think that's a question that everybody should be asking themselves in this day and age. At what point do you have a duty to intervene? And I think Mark Zuckerberg has seen that opportunity to intervene so many times,
That's right.
and he's turned a blind eye, because at the end of the day, it affects his bottom line.
Right. Right. Absolutely. And that tragedy on the train, I just, at some point you do have a responsibility, regardless of what happens to you, to intervene. But here we are, Georgia, and you're absolutely right. When will people intervene?
Well, I know, quick here before we wrap things up, checking in on the Ahmad Aubry trial. If you saw recently, there were some updates that information had been posted online and it jeopardized the trial. There was talks that maybe it was going to result in a mistrial. Oftentimes when information gets out like that, what they'll do is they will circle back with all of the jurors who have been selected and ask them if they saw that information and if they did see it, if it would affect, their ability to be jurors. And so it seems as though they've moved past that and that it's not going to be declared as a mistrial. But however, the issue they're facing now, Ben, is just getting any jurors that feel impartial and able to really serve on this jury. Most of the people who they've spoken to in consideration to be jurors have said that they've seen the video that was posted online. And after witnessing that video, they cannot be impartial. And I think they've sent out notices to more than 600 people. And they're just blowing through everyone saying that they don't feel like they can be impartial in this case.
Yeah. And I think this is the time for people to intervene. And because we have the ability, listen, I don't care what anyone says, in so much as we have the ability to be rational, Georgia, we have the ability to be impartial, even if we've seen that video. Now, some people may just feel so compelled that they can't do it. So be it. But somebody out there, because this is part of us getting justice, and we need to be able to have a jury in order. And look, I tell you who is going to show up, a jury of their peers. They're going to show up. They're going to be, quote unquote, impartial. So we need people who can be impartial on behalf of justice to show up.
My take on this is a little bit different. I think that there needs to be a serious re-examination of our criminal justice process. Gone are the days where a crime is committed and nobody saw it. That's not the time that we live in anymore. There is a camera in everybody's pockets. And we are going to have criminal acts that are caught on camera more and more and more. And so I don't think that we can uphold this idea that we're going to find 12 people in a community where criminal activity happened and none of them saw it. It's not realistic. It's not the reality of the 21st century. Right. Maybe 100 years ago, sure, you could find 12 people in a community who hadn't heard or seen anything, but not anymore. I mean, with the internet and with everybody having access to cameras, we need to do a deep dive on our criminal justice system and create new policies that reflect the 21st century.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you 100% there. Our laws have to be amenable to technology and changes in society that comes as a result of technology. Because we'll never, with the way viral videos work, we'll never be able to get justice if we're going to be waiting on someone who hasn't seen it yet.
Yeah. And one step further, why do we want people to be impartial if they've witnessed someone be murdered?
Well, that's because the appearance of impartiality always serves the powerful, Georgia. That could be, I mean, my God, sister, you just hit on the essential question. That's all. Okay, got you. All right, thank you. So let's take a break. Here, we're going to go here. Georgia, your signal, I thought that was a pregnant pause. I thought I had said something so profound that I really slowed down the entire conversation. Georgia, thank you so much for the coverage that you always do here.
Honestly, just
Okay. All right, so let's do this. We're going to go ahead. That's all we have for On the Clock today. Everyone stick around for more on The Benjamin Dixon Show.
Stars up above me, stars in my eyes.
Good morning, people. You know who it is. You know the voice. You know the sound. It's your boy, James Bubba Williams. DJ Exclusive is in the building. That dang on infrastructure is a biatch. Yes, it is. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Y'all come on in, get some get your drinks, your coffee, your tea, whatever it is you need to get your morning started, y'all. The Benjamin Dixon Show is here. It's going down. Coming up next. Man, we got like and I follow with that. Shout out to Georgia Fort, man. Can't wait to see Georgia on Friday. I'm excited. Woo!
Tell me I'm wasting time. I'll show you what I'm made of. And give my dreams life. I'll put it all on.
Good morning, people. There I is. Yes, there I is. Good morning, everybody.